All right. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, also co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And man, it has been a busy morning, from Star Trek to Secret Invasion and now doing This Week in Review. Of course, we didn't have a chance to do it yesterday because there was just a lot going on with both of us, with myself and with my fellow co-host with Spillman. So let me bring him on now.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? How's it going? How we doing?
What's
I
good?
hope
What's
you're having a
good?
great week.
So it's as you well know, we got San Diego Comic-Con happening this weekend. You can see it here in the background if you guys are checking it out there. Lot to talk about. I'm gonna try to give you guys a quick recap, the best I can, of some of the things that happened over the course of this week. But other than that, as you will know, with This Week in Review, we try to go over a recap of some of the things that have happened over said week. So if you're the type of person you want to be kept up to speed of the goings on in a given week, entertainment wise, and you got to keep it locked here. Make sure you like and subscribe, follow, all that jazz. So with that out of the way, let's get into a couple of the stories that we have. First one I want to get into is the Marvels that dropped over the course of this week, and it providing like a better idea of how the interaction between all of the Marvels will work, whether we're talking about, Photon, also known as, Captain Marvel,
Right.
Carol, our other Captain Marvel, as well as Miss Marvel. So, Spill, I know you had a chance to check out this trailer. It didn't show too much like new stuff. There were a couple of new things here and there, but overall it was a lot of what we saw before. But still, kind of giving us a better feel for like how the interaction and the relationship is going to work between those three. What were your thoughts? What were your impressions?
Well, I'm just generally excited for the film because the Monica Rambeau character is a character that I've always been interested by. She was more popular in the '80s before really I started reading comic books. But as I started to read them more, like I remember the first time I came across a character was when I read the Secret Wars because I wanted to read about like how Spider-Man got the black costume and all that. And I was like, who is this lady? I don't know who this lady is because she's not generally in the rosters of like marquee Avengers, if you would make that
Sure.
argument.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm happy that she's getting the time of day, and they're using that character. A variant of her was featured in the Doctor Strange movie. So it
Her
and
mom.
also
Her mom
no,
was.
her
Yeah.
mom. But I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that
But it's
character
like
was a
so weird. I
variant.
got what.
It was
Yeah. Yeah. I
right.
got
That
what you're
character was a
saying.
variant of the Photon character because I think
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
that sh- that that movie she had similar powers and everything. So
Right.
um, I'm just really interested in seeing it. I think that they are with this phase of the Marvel movies. We haven't really gotten as many like true blockbusters or things that people just love recently. So it's just a thing that's I'm interested in. I hope that they do well with it. They've been doing a lot more obscure characters recently, so
They
that
have.
that may
Yeah.
be a little bit of a hindrance for audiences. But we'll see how it goes. I'm very interested in that, and interested in the Kamala Khan character. But I know that the internet probably hates it because they're like more women and more people that aren't white. But shut up, internet.
All right. So in general, and I feel like this is kind of a segue from talking Secret Invasion a little earlier, is we all know and we can all agree. Don't get me wrong. I've loved a lot of the Marvel shows, but we can all agree too that some of the Marvel shows have kind of been middle of the ground. They
Hmm.
haven't been horrible, but they haven't been great in what we expect from Marvel. And of course, they've also gone under change of management where we've seen it's been put out there, by new by the current management that has replaced the old management, that the focus going forward is going to be more substance over overabundance of content. So we're going to get fewer shows, but that's what I was looking for: quantity over quantity, quality over quantity. So if that's going to be the focus, hopefully they can kind of right the ship of where the MCU stands right now. Because for the first time in a long time, the MCU is, I feel, in a weird place that it's never really been before. It's always been relatively consistent, unlike its contemporaries that also have been doing a superhero fare. So this is going to be an opportunity to kind of right that ship and get back on track to like the caliber that we're expecting of Marvel. And I mean, we have another series that is coming out later this year. I want to say Loki drops in October, so that's right before Captain Marvel or Marvels, which will drop in November. So we'll see. I am looking forward to kind of the dynamic between those three characters. There are a lot of things that have kind of been left hanging from other shows that these characters have appeared in terms of their development, especially when it comes to, if we're talking about Monica and we're talking about Carol Danvers, that relationship, because we kind of got hints to it in what is it in WandaVision, that
Yeah.
things are not particularly great relationship wise there. So maybe we'll get further development on as to why that is. I have my suspicions on why it is, but maybe it'll get covered more in depth as we are watching the film. And then uh you know being able to see where the characters fall by the end, like where they are in terms of their development or the arc by the end of the film, because it's always, of course, when we're talking about MCU, once a lot of these characters come into their own, because for a long time, especially with Rambeau, her she was just, last we saw her, just getting her abilities. So
Right.
now that she will be coming into her own, I'm assuming by this film, now they'll be able to do, even more interesting stuff with that character. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. As I said, it's going to be an opportunity for Marvel to kind of right the ship of where things stand right now. I don't know if you have any final thoughts before we move on to the next topic.
I just hope that, I think that Marvel might have gotten to the end of their rope because I feel like they've done all of their like marquee storylines. They've done Civil War and a lot of the storylines I feel like they've gotten to before I thought they would, but they're not really like following the timeline. They're just jumping around and doing what they want to. So we'll see how this turns out. Really, just like we've said before, this phase four stuff hasn't been the best stuff. But we're really comparing it to arguably one of the most successful like sections of movies in movie
Yeah, and I
history,
mean, it's
really. So it's
unprecedented the
like
amount of
it's
success
hard to
we've had.
compare. Yeah,
So
it's
yeah,
it's really hard to compare. Like
but
it's
it's
hard to
sad we've
compare.
gotten like very jaded because
We
we're
really have.
expecting, them to bat 1,000 all the time. So
Yeah, and it's just like, not all of these stories are great. Because I mean, they're comic books. I mean, these are periodicals that come out monthly. So sometimes the stories that they have are not the best stories just because they got to get a story out every month. And that's a lot harder than people give it credit for. And it's a lot more involved than people get it credit for. So we as viewers of content just need to kind of be calm, especially with this writers strike and everything. I can imagine that that this has affected a lot of this stuff because it was the pandemic, then the writer strike, and now the actor strike. So we'll see.
and that actually gets into the segue for our next story. Actually, over the course of this week, it was news that dropped about Braun. Braun, if you are not familiar, they're a finance and production company that have backed a number of critically acclaimed films such as Joker or Judas and the Black Messiah. It unfortunately, over the course of this week, is revealed by its co-founder, Aaron J. Gilbert, that is filed for bankruptcy. Um, and just to go into more specifics, Gilbert, he was quoted as saying, and this is a story out of Deadline, having explored many options for many months, Braun had no choice but to take this step in light of its financial circumstances. The last few years have been incredibly difficult for Braun, and have only gotten more complicated over these past months. COVID and the many other issues affecting the media industry the last few years, most recently the strikes, which we were just talking about a moment before, have made Braun's ability to continue its existing business impossible. So, you hear this news, Spillman, and what are your impressions and what are your thoughts of, having, this organization that has helped to shepherd and get a lot of films that we've come to know and love made, filing for bankruptcy?
Yeah, I'm really sad to see this company go. When I first saw the information about them, I was a little confused because I was like, LeBron James sells lots of sneakers. What are we talking about? He's going bankrupt. So I was on a completely different tangent. Then I looked at it and I was like, oh no, this is somebody else entirely. But they seem to, they seem to be a great movie house. They don't make the most, like they're not doing everything that everyone else does. Even with their superhero movie that they made, it wasn't a traditional superhero movie. It wasn't, CGI heavy. Like I don't think that Joker movie had any CGI that I could think of. They also, it wasn't like a pure set piece type movie where we're talking about like, um, Act One intro, Act Two conflict, Act Three hero wins. It's
Sure,
not even set up
sure.
like that. Judas and the Black Messiah was a crazy movie. I really enjoyed that. So I'm sad to see that they don't have. They won't be making movies any longer. But that just goes to show that we, as as Black consumers, we need to consume more of this type of media to support these companies, because we always complain about how our voices aren't getting heard, our stories aren't being told. And this is one of the companies that's actually putting money where the mouth was, and doing those kind of projects that generally are not done. So to me, I think that it's a real loss to the movie making industry that's more homogenous every day, especially with the like we've said, like the last couple of weeks and couple of months with this writer strike and now the actor strike. Generally, when these kind of things happen, major corporations merge and get smaller. They don't get big. They don't start letting more players into the game. So hopefully this doesn't bode as bad as I think it is, but we just really need to have more voices and more people making movies, because the more people that make movies, the better movies that are made. Like you could argue that that the you could argue that the Joker movie is one of the best made comic book movies that's come out in a very long time. And we just need to make sure that we're getting all that squared away and everything. So I just think that we need to support these movie houses that's actually doing what they're supposed to, and not just painting by the numbers with these products that they're putting out to us. Because we'll go and see a movie that's trash, instead of something that's like truly avant-garde and telling a new story, like Judas and the Black Messiah.
For sure, for sure. And a lot of it, you said already, but I guess the only other thing that I'll add is that this is a an ongoing story. So I will add that component. According to, as I said, the article, Gilbert was quoted as saying, in referencing this situation that Braun finds itself in. Your continued support and patience will remain critical during this restructuring process, and we will continue to keep you informed as we move through this process. So it's an ongoing thing. At least right now, it's not looking, too great, but hopefully things are able to, turn around where, in having, going through this process, that it's that things, things can potentially change. So try to keep you posted as those things do change, of course. But yeah, it's like it's a bummer because like a lot of the films that they've done, I've been a huge fan of, and we don't see a whole bunch of a lot of the films that they do these days where we're talking about films where we have uh, trend wise, we're not seeing a lot of films that are kind of middle of the road. We either see really small budget films, we see them at both extremes, either really small budget films or really large tentpole films. And what we're seeing now, we're seeing kind of a turn now where a lot of films that are like these big budget tentpole films are not getting the traction that they used to. And I think that is a testament to, what where there has been more focus on flair than it is actual on substance. And as we start seeing more films that are kind of middle of the road in terms of their budget level, perhaps there will be more of a focus on that substance of story of all those things that you want to have in a movie. And don't get me wrong, like the spectacle and the special effects are great, and I love big
Mm-hmm.
blockbuster films, but I think many can agree that with a lot of the blockbusters that we've had recently, there seemed to be more of a focus on the spectacle than it has been on the substance of what the story entails. Now, I mean, there still are some rarities out there that we've had that are still still consistently good, but I can probably count them off my hand of which franchises there are. Most of the time, at least recently, as we've been coming out of the pandemic, we've seen a lot of blockbusters where they've had budgets that have ballooned where you're like, why does it need to be this big? And
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, it didn't need to be as expensive as it was in order to still be able to tell an effective and entertaining story. So but I don't know if
Yeah.
you have any final thoughts, but we're going to wrap it up with our final story, which I teased in the beginning. And like I said, that is none other than San Diego Comic Con. I've said it once and I said it again, Spill. I'm going to get you out here one way or another. I know you talked about the cosplay stuff, but I'm going to get you out here.
No, that's
We're
right, baby. We're gonna have a costume of the day every day. We're gonna be
so,
it. I could be
but
Groot, you could be Rocket Raccoon, man. I'm telling you, we can do all kind of stuff, bro. Do
but
all
yeah, no,
kind of
it's
stuff.
definitely been an interesting show. Been here, since the top of the week, and I always like to come a couple of days early just to kind of get a feel or kind of relax into being here in San Diego before things kind of like kick off. It officially, well, it doesn't officially, unofficially, it kicks off on Wednesday, and then officially it kicks off. It happens on an official basis on Thursday. But it's been fascinating because I feel like it's been as busy. You're hearing the noise now, but I
Oh
feel
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
it's been as busy now than it normally is. But in terms of where the focus has been, and for obvious reasons, it's a lot of the traffic that has not been on the programming end, we now have going onto the floor. So a lot of times, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, preview night is, like I said, that unofficial first day. And a lot of times people use that as a day to kind of walk the floor because maybe they know for the rest of the show they may be going to panels or activations being a lot of the interactive stuff that you can do off-site sometimes or on-site, but most of the time it's off-site, just outside or elsewhere in Gaslamp. And so normally that night on the exhibit hall floor it's busy, but you can still walk around. And that was not the case this year. Like Wednesday and Thursday on the exhibit hall floor was like what you come to anticipate for Friday and Saturday. And I feel like because it was so busy on those first couple of days, I feel like it kind of trickled off as the con continued. And also fascinating, and let me see if I can bring it over here to the to this side here where you see the tents where you line up for Hall H. Hall H was actually, you know, easier, understandably so, easier to get into this year. Many times, people there's a whole process that attendees typically go through in order to ensure that they get a way into Hall H. And with Comic Con itself, uh, typically that'll happen by way of wristbands that you're given the night before, and it gives you kind of like a litmus test or idea of where you stand in those chances. So if you get that wristband, you know that you're good to get into a Hall H as an attendee. And a lot of times, what people will do, which I'm sure you probably have seen if you're even relatively familiar with Comic Con, is that people will camp out. Like they're hardcore. They will camp out the night before to make sure they get that wristband, and then they will also continue to camp out to make sure that they don't lose their spot for the programming that's here. So this year, that wasn't the case, where we have a lot of folks that were able, I mean, you were able just to walk into the convention center, or not convention center, but you were able to walk into Hall H relatively easily without having to queue up so in such an extreme manner that you would normally do at any other given year. So that was like really fascinating. I think I have a short. I'll try to see if I can do a YouTube short for you guys. I think I have one. I'll have to look, but uh, the tents where they normally have people queued up to get into Hall H wasn't even like full on the days that I had a chance to check it out throughout the week. And even in the brief instances that I was able to get into Hall H, it wasn't it wasn't nearly as full. It was kind of eerie how few people were in Hall H. And so I would just put that up to of course, because a lot of we had a lot of folks panels that people would have wanted to see back out, obviously because of the strike that's been going on, but also by way of that, you also had a lot of those people, I feel, going to the exhibit hall floor versus going to a lot of those panels. So, um, passing it off to you, Spill. I know you haven't had a chance to go to Comic Con yet, but like, did you have any like questions or things that you were like curious about? Since you're
All
not.
right. I'll ask you the layman's questions. What's the best costume you've seen so far? What's the best costume you've seen so far?
Oh, I can tell you that. So, and I've seen, many of you have seen it before, but it was cool to see it in person. There's a cosplayer who oftentimes cosplays as like Juggernaut, or he'll cosplay. I don't know if it's the same cosplayer. You guys can let me know in the comments. But I've seen. It may be the same person, may not be. But there's a guy who also cosplays as the Rhino character from the Spider-Man games, and
Mm-hmm.
it looks really good. I did a YouTube short of it. I'll try to post it today. You guys can check it out over on the channel right here. Just
Mm-hmm.
click over on
Mm-hmm.
the shorts portion of our channel. But nah, that was like legit. That
Legit.
Rhino cosplay was legit, which is not surprising. I mean, I want to say when it comes to cosplays, I mean, most of the cons that I go to is pretty impressive, but I would have to say like right at the pinnacle, at least from my experience of going to many of the cons, is you have San Diego and you have Dragon Con, and then everyone else kind of falls in line after that. Like the cosplays that you see at this show and the cosplays that you see at Dragon Con are like bananas, like ridiculous. So but other than that, were there any other things like in terms of things that you programming or like other events or what?
So, like the hotel situation, what kind of hotel are you
Oh
staying? Come
God.
on, give us that. Give us that. You in a
Okay.
rooftop pool? I heard you might have gone to a pool party or two. Give us, come on, give us the game,
Okay.
brother.
Okay. All right.
Give
All
us the
right. All right. So I'll
game.
run through the week. Okay. I'll run through the
Yeah,
week.
yeah.
So all right. So I didn't stay at a hotel this time. Stay with family. Shout out shout out my relative that I'm staying with. Been staying with this week. And this is something that I actually, even though I've been going to Comic Con since 2009, like a really long time. It's crazy. It's been 15 years, like my 15th Comic Con. Counting if I'm counting the two in what is it, Comic Con at homes that we had during the pandemic. So if we're not counting that, it'd be 13. But still, quite a number of years of going here. But I didn't really start taking advantage of a lot of the like nightlife and the stuff that happened after hours until like the last couple of years. And it's more so, it's not because there wasn't a desire to do it, but those first couple of years, I'll be honest, were kind of like growing pains where you're trying to figure out how you're trying to navigate through the things that you need to do in order to have a good con. And if you have like your Comic Con bag, which you get to throw all your items in, whether it's your program or any other miscellaneous like souvenirs that you get over the course of the week, you're tired because you're lugging all of this stuff around, and so that's when you start becoming hip to the idea of get in the hotel in Gaslamp, get in the hotel in downtown. So that way, you can drop your stuff off. I know some hotels, they allow you to utilize, even if I want to say this is the case, you're able to utilize a storage that they have available, even if you're not physically staying there, if you're not checking in. I haven't taken advantage of that. Most of the time is either, I'm staying in Gaslamp or I'm staying elsewhere. And so, that's always something that I kind of prioritize to make sure that I'm in a vicinity that's close enough. And then also, and speaking to being in a vicinity that's close enough, I've gotten a lot better about this. And you get a lot better about this the more that you go. With all the souvenirs that you get, and you get a lot of it, is being able to determine what you're going to take and what you're not going to take, because people are constantly handing this stuff to you to say, check this out, here's a sticker, here's a keychain, here's this, and as you do it more and more, you figure out, am I really going to use this by the time I get home? Am I really going to use this keychain? Am I really going to use this poster? Am I going to hang up this poster, or is it just going to collect dust somewhere? And so you get
Mm-hmm.
better about kind of weeding through a lot of the stuff that you normally get at San Diego Comic Con. So that way you can kind of make your not only your con a lot more enjoyable because you're not lugging all that stuff around that at the end of the day you're not going to use, but it also makes your travel home a lot more bearable because you're not going to have to like ship off stuff ahead of you to take home, or you're not trying to stuff your bag with a lot of the stuff that at the end of the day you're never ever going to touch or use again. So I would say it's those two things. But and speaking further to that about the events and stuff, so Thursday they had there were a couple of events for some shows, and they also had, I'm trying to think, they did have some third party organizations that were doing events just for folks that were here for Comic Con. There was like a pool party, for example, at the Hard Rock yesterday. Yeah, yesterday at midday. I want to say kind of like late morning, early afternoonish. So yeah, I mean, you have tons of cool stuff like that you can enjoy over the course of the show. But as I said, and then it was even more so this in terms of weeding through a lot of that stuff. I didn't really, in lieu of everything that's going on, I didn't, take any stuff because I want to be in support of what's happening, with the strikes, and I'm supportive of what's at stake. We've talked about it many times here on the show of what's at stake for writers and for actors. So at the end of the day, it was nice to be able to see a lot of people. This is probably like the chillest like San Diego Comic Con I've had because a lot of other ones have been like, so I feel like even though it's been fun and it's been organized, it's still been frantic organized of getting to this press room, or getting to this panel, or making it to this particular a show. And that wasn't really the case this year, which was I'll be honest, it was a nice change of pace this year, when a lot of other times it's kind of frantic, and it's very much a marathon as soon as that Wednesday hits. So
Yeah.
yeah, like it was a fun show. It was very much a different show. There were a lot of parts of it that was kind of it was interesting, and a little eerie, but in how how different it was to a standard Comic Con. But in some cases, it was a welcome change of pace, in that it allowed a little more relaxation as the week progressed forward, versus it being really frantic all week. Because I feel like it's kind of like a crescendo, where like Wednesday it just steadily goes up that incline, and then you like are at your peak between Friday and Saturday, and then it's not until after I feel like the Saturday programming is done that it feels like it like kind of peters out and relaxes. And that wasn't the case this time. I feel like it happened a lot sooner this year than it did in prior years. So, but
Yeah. So
yeah,
that's really cool. I'm really interested. I'm like a
we're
fly
gonna
on
get
the
you out here, man.
wall.
I told you we're gonna
Ladies
get
and
you out here.
gentlemen, this is not just something we
Kicking
say
and
for the
screaming, we're gonna get
show.
you
We're
out here.
not
We're gonna
saying
get
it
you
for
out
the
here.
show. That's right. We're not just saying this for the show. I've got a few costume ideas. I do want to be a xenomorph or something, because I feel like if I dress up like a xenomorph, it would be very terrifying to people, and it'd be like, "Yo, that's a real xenomorph. I don't think it's a fake one. That's a big person in there." A bunch of other things. I'd like to see some of the panels and stuff. What would you say? Like, I know that there's not that many panels even this year. Like, I know I saw a post where they were saying it was like 16 things that like Marvel dropped last year, and this year it's like one.
So here's the thing, and I mean we covered it in the show, but what we noticed, and the thing that's been interesting about that, or fascinating about that, is a lot of it we would picture that it would end up being released here at Comic Con. And a good example of that would be the Marvel trailer. Something like that would have been dropped at Comic Con. A lot of the casting news that we had been talking about before, with like the Superman film, a lot of that would have been likely dropped at Comic Con. Because I mean, we got the news of Superman and with Lois, but we also got news of some of the other ancillary characters or supporting characters with Green Lantern and many others.
Mhm.
So like that, something like that would have been dropped, and we would have actually had the actors more than likely come out to officially be announced as those characters. So it would have been a surprise, and it wouldn't have been, just dropped as an article. It would have been announced at the panel as a surprise.
Mhm.
So and that, I mean, that to it's hard to really explain if you've never done it and never experienced it. But when you're talking about Hall H, and those times that we've had those panels where uh, uh, character announcements are made, I should say casting announcements are made, or reveals are made of films that are coming, that are in development, especially when we're talking about like franchises and things. It's electric, in that space. So, I'm looking forward, that we're back to the time where we have are able to do those projects, or I should say see those projects again. But of course, the strikes that we have take precedence right now, because it needs to be done. um, but it will be cool, once an agreement is made, to see Comic Con back in the capacity that that many seasoned folks, or even folks that are new to it, that didn't have a chance to experience this year, to see it in its normal, its standard capacity. I'll put it that way. But
Yep.
that is going to wrap up our show. Go ahead. Do you have any other final thoughts?
I was going to say that's pretty much it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, I'm back in the
You
screen.
good?
I'm
You
mixed
good?
up too much. Yeah, but you know, I'm really happy you got to enjoy yourself, even though this is like a down year for the con. But you know, it is the nature of the beast. Hopefully they fix this stuff and they bring it back, but who knows? You know, with the way the world is working these days, who knows what can happen? So
Who knows
I'm
indeed.
interested in coming. Yeah, who
Who
knows?
knows indeed. I mean, let me say this too. Like, even though it's been a different San Diego Comic Con, I've still been appreciative of how this year's been. Like I said, it's been a lot chiller year, but it's also been in a year in which I was still able to enjoy quite a lot. Even though we don't there aren't actors and writers here. At the end of the day, Comic Con is not not about Hollywood. It's about comic books. At the end of the day, it's in the
At the
name
end
of
of
the
the day,
event
yeah.
at the end of the day. So it was cool to have Comic Con have an opportunity to go back to its roots and really focus on its creators in the world of the comics industry. And then it was also great, even though there aren't actors and writers here, we have other creatives that are just as awesome. Where we're talking about composers and other folks that are do other disciplines in that space. Whether we're talking about on the big screen, on the small screen, or anywhere else in the gaming world as well. So it was still a nice con. It was just I would just say it was a unique con, and it was fascinating to see if you have gone to Comic Con before and you're a vet or seasoned of being able to compare in your head of how a standard year is to this year. That's all. But yeah, so that wraps up this edition of This Week in Review. I want to thank Spill, of course, for hopping on
Yep.
and doing the show. I know we normally do this on Saturday, but as I said, there was a lot going on this weekend between the both of us, so we did it today. Spill, I'm gonna punt it off to you. Can you tell folks where they can find you?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you can find me at Truly Spill on Instagram.com. Don't forget to give any of our content 5 stars. This show, any of the other Star Trek shows, or anything else in this network. Make sure you give us 5 stars. Give us glowing reviews. Tell your mama and all your friends about us, and please share with a friend.
All right, there you have it. So again, I want to thank Spills for hopping on. I'm your host, Brandon Choi, also co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me at Brandon Choi ENT on Twitter and also Brandon Choi _ENT on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there and see you soon. Peace.
Peace, peace. 5 stars, 5 stars.